So, stick around in my. Y'all are free to steal that and use that. You know, write a card. You know. Dear beloved, thanks for sticking around in my colander. Love you. All right, dating. We're gonna go back 150 years to something called courting. We're gonna look at courting. We're gonna look at dating, and we're gonna look at. I don't know why I have to say it that way, but I do. All right. So prior to the dating, 150 years ago, middle of the Civil War, we're going to meet. There was a system called calling. Anyone know what calling was?
Is it like when the class manager, like when the girl had like men come to her, different guys come to her house, and she would like sit and talk to them?
Awesome. Well, in her case, didn't have guys come to her house, right?
Oh, well, yeah.
She had no legitimate callers, right? So Tennessee Williams, right? Glass Menagerie. She's all in it. They want the mother wants the daughter to, and the mother brags about how many gentlemen callers she had in her day, right? Men would come to her house, and the way you got to come to the house was you had to actually get a calling card. Or the woman would say, we receive guests on Thursday. And you would go, like, can I get an, you somehow get an invitation. I'm going to tell you that there's some rules about this, though. But the female controlled it. So the woman would invite a man to call on her, and the family would typically be present. And you would know if you were liked by how close the family stuck around, right? So you and I go on a date, your family loves me. They're like, oh, give them time to themselves. Your family hates me. They are hovering about, right? So it would be a way to chaperone and control the situation. It's kind of cool, right? But to do this, you have to have a house, you have to have a parlor, right? You have to have a place where the guys can come. Well, there were also socials and dances, but those were on top of this system we have called calling. Let me give you a little quote here. I realize this is going to be a fairly long quote, but there's a reason. There's a book called From the Front Porch to the Back Seat. I love the title of this most of. It's a history of American dating. And I'm going to give you the following. It's a fairly lengthy quote from her, from Bailey, but I think it's instructive to go back 150 years and see what's going on. This is what Bailey writes. Oh, this may be the... But anyways, in the calling system, the woman took the initiative. Etiquette books and columns were adamant on that point. It was the girl's privilege to ask a young man to call. Furthermore, it was highly improper for the man to take the initiative. So then we get where Bailey's quoting some advice columnists, where the advice columnists are like, well, may I call upon a young woman who I greatly admire, though she has not given me permission? Would she be flattered at my eagerness? Or, I don't know why they would say it in that voice, but they would. Would she be flattered at my eagerness? It's like I'm antebellum to me. I don't know where that came from. Tennessee Williams, I start thinking Mississippi for some reason, then I'm stuck in an accent, right? The advice columnist says, I think you would risk her just displeasure. Then she softens it, blah, blah. So, what is the basic point here? In the calling system, who had the absolute, socially accepted right to ask someone? Women. All right. With the rise of cities, so now we're moving from the late 1860s, we're moving to the 1870s, when Birmingham finally gets founded. Didn't we get founded like 1870? Is that or the 1880s? Anyone know when Birmingham's founded? This is true, we are a post-Civil War, one of the major post-Civil War cities. Like we weren't founded after the Civil War, which sort of makes the fact that we had so much race problems rather ironic in my mind, but whatever. It is, I'm like, really? We were founded after the Civil War and yet we still had all these problems? Oh, go Birmingham. Alright, so, it's now the 1890s. I don't have a large parlor where I can entertain gentlemen calls. Right? What's happening in the broader world? We have the advent of capitalism, we have the advent of factories, we have the advent of these larger cities. People are moving to the cities. We don't have parlors where we can have gentlemen callers come and visit us, so we're going to have to meet in public. But wait a second, meeting in public, what will that require? Now we could go, we can have a date at the Birmingham Library, right? That's totally acceptable, like it's free. But do we want to do that every date?
Negative.
Why not?
Make it boring.
Okay, so we're going to the library, we're going to go to the park, we're going to do lots of free things, all right? But after a while, you might think, I'm tired, you know, like, oh, the library is nice, the art museum is great, but let's go get a soda, right? Coca-Cola's been invented. Coca-Cola's invented, 1870 something by some dude in Atlanta, Chandler, is that right?
Sure. Of course. Whatever you say.
Yeah, I mean, is his name Chandler? It's like some sort of Asia Chandler. Anyway, whoever invented Coca-Cola, it's 1870s-ish, right? So now we want a cola, but colas take, what? Well, the car's going to be a little bit later, but it's going to take
Money.
money, right? It's going to take money. So what we have here is that at the end of the 1800s, the tradition of meeting in public starts taking hold. And what people found is, I can't just go into a store and sit there. They don't like me to do that. I need some money to buy a cola or to buy a, I don't know what people call then, well, let's say ice cream. I have no idea. Right? Well, who's making the money? Men. Huh. How might this affect finding a mate? Before, women had absolute authority. You could call or you could not call. You could give me a calling card or you could not give me a calling card. Now, it takes money. And you don't have a parlor for me to go. You got to go to, you know, Woolworth. Y'all know what Woolworth is. Woolworth was an old 5 and dime store, right? Wow, I feel old. Because I remember Woolworth. All right. All right, so the initiative starts to shift. And what's interesting, I'm going to give you another quote from Bailey. And you're going to go, what in the world is this woman like schizophrenic? In this time period, the faux pas is going to shift from men cannot ask a woman for a calling card to women cannot ask a man for a date. But what's going to be intriguing is the language. I want you to pay real close attention to the language the advice columnists are going to use, because it's going to sound suspiciously like stuff I've heard in even recent conversations. Here is Bailey on this. Contrasts these strictures with advice on dating etiquette from the 1940s and 50s, when dating is fully taken hold. An advice book for men and women warns that, quote, girls who try to usurp the right of boys to choose their dates will ruin a good dating career. Fair or not, it is the way of life. And here's the next sentence, is the one I love the most. From the Stone Age, the late 1850s, when men chased and captured their women, comes the yin of a boy to do the pursuing. You will control your impatience, therefore, and respect the time-honored custom of the last 50 years for the boys to take the first step. What's happened here? What? It's a complete 180, but you got, so like in one social structure where it was women do the calling, the advice columnist, the whole culture is like, that's what women, that makes a lot of sense that women would do that. You bring them to the house, give the parents a chance to meet, blah, blah, blah. 180 degrees, and 50 years later, a new mythology develops. Now, I bring this up because, do we still see this mythology? Yeah. Which sort of brings a question to me. If the raison for it was, the reason for it was this money issue, and now females are making as much as males, some of them, yes. Actually, some data just came out very recently suggesting that the wage gap has even disappeared. The male and female wage gap has gone away. Why do we still have this? Or let me phrase it another way. Why don't you ask guys out on dates?
It's just like it's been a norm now. Like guys ask out and then they pay for a date. And if girl does that, it can kind of a guy can feel insulted. Then,
Okay. So now let's go back
I
to
mean,
the
I don't
1860s.
know, but, it's like I asked you on date, so let me pay.
But I recognize they may feel that way, but it is not the way of nature. It's not, it's not required. I mean, think, okay, you're a girl of the 1890s, right? Awesome, right? You're the 1890s. You're in the midst of this shift, right? And you're having an argument with a guy. And you're going, well, why don't you ask girls out? Because we got to go to the park. We got to go to the where do they say, Five and Dime, and we got to get a cola. You have money. Why don't you do the asking? You would probably make the exact same argument and go, well, he's probably going to feel bad that I'm usurping it, her right. What's intriguing to me is how each culture thinks that whatever it is doing, from the Stone Age. I love that one. That's my favorite part of this quote. From the Stone Age, 1866. She continues on. One teen advice book from 1950 told girls never take the initiative with a boy, even under a pretext as asking about homework. You got the geometry homework and go on a date? Because that always works. Quote, boys are jealous of their masculine prerogative of taking the initiative. This shift is still going on. And there are people who wring their hands at the current dating scene. And they think that y'all are destroying humanity. With your texting, with your hooking up, with your whatever. I look at it and go, really? They're destroying humanity? Because my parents thought we were destroying humanity. And you know what my parents' thought?
They were destroying.
Yeah, they were destroying humanity. And so we can phrase this as a different question. We can go, what are going to be the changes that has happened in marriage that may be producing these changes in dating? So we're going to end up with this set of lectures. As money began to play a role, though, new issues surface, right? What determined your worth in the dating scene? We don't like to say it this way. It sounds crass. It sounds mean. But what determined your worth? Ooh, I don't like that.
How much money you have? and
Money for males is going to be one.
Attractiveness.
Attractiveness. So attractiveness plays a role. So attractiveness is going to play a role. But we're going to see there's been this huge, massive shift in marriage. Massive. And it sort of happened before y'all were born, because it happened before the 1990s. You don't know how old I feel some days. I have friends who go, yeah, I was talking to this, 23-year-old the other. I'm like, that's my life. I feel old every day I wake up.
That's 23-year-old.
I do. I feel old every day, especially now because I wake up with injuries. I don't know where I got them from. There's no one around to blame. I'm like, why are you hurting me, right? So we're going to see, one of the things that happened, we're going to see this shift, we're going to give some words to it, but it was called production complementarity. So back in the 1890s, the way, or what you were looking for in a partner was called a production complementary. They didn't say it that way. No one wrote Hallmark cards and went, would you like to be my production complementary partner? You fit through the colander. I don't know if they had colanders. I imagine they did though, right? And what production complementarity meant was, can we make a household function? There are things that are required to make a home work. If we're going to have kids, someone has to raise the kids, and someone has to make the money, because now we live in a consumer society. And our society said to females, you go take care of the house, you go make money out in the outside world, and that's how we're going to make it work. That's a production complementarity.